Hey guys, I'm Taylor, and today we're going to talk about one of the most important things that we do to get our plants really healthy, starting from seed to start to in the ground to harvest. One of the most important things that we make is potting soil. So we're going to show you how we do that. This is something that we've been doing for a while now, ever since we started growing plants, and we just really like to make our own. You can buy it from the store, but it's pretty easy to make on your own at home, just from raw ingredients. And I think there's some really key reasons for why you might want to do that we'll get into. What is potting mix or potting soil? Potting soil is just the soil that you're going to grow your plants in from seed. It's kind of like an ideal environment for them, just like the perfect ratio of good drainage and aeration and nutrients. So we're just going to set up our plants for success right from the beginning. And there's really three main ingredients to any good potting mix. We've got compost, or some sort of material that's a really good organic matter that's nutrient rich. And then we've got something to give it aeration or drainage. And in our case, we're using vermiculite. You can use perlite. And then the last ingredient that most people use is something like peat moss. We've used peat moss in the past, or you could use coco coir. In the future, we want to experiment with leaf mold. But this year, we've been using sheep's wool pellets. And so we'll show you how we do that. And I'll show you how our potting mix turns out that we really like. Here's our ratio. It's very simple. We do 2 parts compost to 1 part vermiculite. And that makes the base of our potting mix. So at this point, you could do 1 part peat moss, but instead what we're doing is we're using wool pellets, and the ratio for this is 1 part pellet to 32 parts potting mix. The math gets a little weird there, but basically for a gallon of potting mix that I make from the vermiculite and the compost, we will put a half of a cup of these wool pellets in there. I'll show you how we start getting mixing on that. We've got our tote that's got some leftover potting mix in there from last time. And this is our compost. So this is homemade compost, and you can use store-bought if you want, of course. Just make sure, obviously, that it's a really high quality. This is the first bit of nutrients, and this is the first environment that your plant is going to grow in. So it's really important that it's super healthy right from the very beginning. We've got this really high quality compost that we made. It's got biochar and just like other good amendments in it. This is sifted, and we use this sifter, this really nice 1/4 inch sifter, to actually just make sure all of our compost is fully ready to be able to go into a soil block. We've got these chunks that came out when we sifted it, these large wood chips or just pieces of biochar or rocks. And if you're using soil blocks or even just like small plug trays, that's like half the plug tray, just like wood chips. So you want to get those out. We just recommend that you sift all of your materials so that there's no clumps in there. So we'll start off, I'll do 1 of these. This is a quart of vermiculite, and I'm just going to put it right in the bin. And then I'll do 2 quarts of compost. There's 1, 2, and then I'll do just a little bit more to get this to like a full gallon. I'm gonna go 2/3 of a quart of compost, and then 1/3 of a quart of compost, approximately. It doesn't have to be perfect. So at that point, we've got all of our compost and our vermiculite in here, and I'm just gonna mix it by hand. You just want to mix it nice and thoroughly. Basically your potting mix. So that's pretty mixed. We'll mix it up a little bit more. The way that you get your wool pellets ready to go in there is that you have to hydrate them a little bit. So we've got some hot water. It's not like fully boiling, but it's pretty warm water. We're going to take a half of a cup of these wool pellets and dissolve them into 2 cups of water. So half cup of wool pellets for approximately a gallon of potting mix. This is really going to help with moisture retention, and also it's a slow release source of nitrogen. So that's pretty nice. There we go. And now we're just going to stir this up a little bit and let it hydrate. Let the wool pellets hydrate for just a few minutes. We've got our wool pellets, kind of pretty much fully hydrated, and we're just going to dump it in here and mix it up a bit, again, just by hand. And we just want to get these clumps of wool kind of broken up and totally integrated. You know, something else that I mentioned, in our compost we have biochar, which is activated charcoal that's soaked up a bunch of nutrients from the compost, and that is just such a helpful substance to have in a potting mix, especially if it's nice and fine, because it helps a lot with water retention and aeration. It kind of does double duty, as well as it just holds so many good nutrients for your seeds to be able to access. We're very interested in making sure that our seeds start off in a great place right from the get-go. So this is just the base of a good potting mix. You can add different liquid amendments at small amounts. I'm actually going to add some LAB in here since we've got it on hand, and you can add small amounts of Jadam liquid fertilizer or whatever natural fertilizer that you've made. If you have some microbial solution, you can use that just a tiny bit, like diluted maybe 100 to maybe 1 to 100 in water. If you have kelp meal or any extra nutrient supplements that you want to add in, this is a great time to do that as well. But our compost is really nutrient rich, so I think we're pretty good at this point. Okay, so now it's relatively well mixed, and we're going to start adding in water. This is, again, just a key step in getting your potting soil ready to use. You actually need to saturate it pretty good. So we'll show you. It's hard to give you an exact ratio because your compost might be wet, like ours is pretty damp right now, but we'll show you what it should look like. So I'm just gonna add in some water. It's just a quart of water, and then mix it up and see how it feels. And once it gets to the consistency that I'm happy with, we can use it. I'll show you what that looks like. We're going to be making soil blocks. With soil blocks, the potting mix, it actually needs to be really saturated, really quite wet, more than you would think. And if it gets too saturated, then you can always add in more compost, vermiculite and peat moss or sheep's wool. So you just kind of get it until it feels about right. And this actually right here might be pretty good. This is pretty wet, which is, again, what you want for your potting mix when you're about to plant, like sow seeds into it. So for starters, you can see it just it's kind of like jiggly almost. And there's a certain feel. I mean, there's water coming out of it. I mean, it is kind of streaming, but it's more just dripping out. See that? You want it to be this kind of jelly, just wiggly substance, because when you make the soil blocks, they need to hold together really well. All right, everyone, that's our video on potting soil. If you found that helpful, give our video a like and subscribe to our channel for more content like that in the future.